Welcome to Untold Stories, Growing Up in Ashland and Hanover County, Black and White Experiences. My name is Anthony Keith, and I'll be your MC for this afternoon. If you haven't already done so, would you please silence your phones? Hopefully everyone has received a program for today, and you get a chance, if you can read through it, to find out all the people who are involved in terms of not only our panel, but all the people who have been part of this program this year and in the past. And these people have helped to make this program a great success. A special shout out goes to Christina Reese, who's the principal here at Hanover High School, and Amanda Washington, Director of Facilities for Hanover County Public Schools, for their last-minute help to make Hanover High available after the flooding that took place in Patrick Henry High School auditorium. So again, we want to thank these individuals for allowing us to be here. We want to thank Patrick Henry for hosting us, originally planning to host us, but unfortunately because of misfortune, we could not be there. And I would like to thank each one of you for being here, because you had to navigate to make it. And I know I got a little bit lost trying to get here, because I'm not real familiar with some of these roads, so hopefully you weren't in the situation I was in. But again, I'm happy to see you here, and I'm hoping that more people will be walking through as the program goes on. At this point in time, before we get started, we're going to have a video clip that's going to be presented to us by Tom Wolf, and this is a kind of highlights of things that have happened last year. So Tom will start.
I guess one highlight that I want to mention that really stands out, and I think it was during my sophomore or junior year, when we had none other than float like a butterfly, sting like a bee, you can't hit but you can't see, Muhammad Ali. He was on a journey that caused him to stop here in Ashland, and as one of the coaches were down picking up lunch, they ran into each other, and he came by John M. Gandy for a special call assembly. And I want you to tell you now that gym went wild to see the world's greatest.
One thing that did make an impression on me when I was in junior high school, we all had braces. And one weekend, one of my wires broke. It was sticking right over the side of my mouth. So my mother called the orthodontist on Monday morning and asked if I could come in that day. Well, he didn't have any appointments that day, but I could come the following day. But it was the day that he treated colored children, he said. And so I went into the office on that day. When I walked in, I sat down in the waiting room. I hadn't been in the seat for 10 or 15 seconds when the lady who worked in the office came and said, "Lindsay, come with me." And I said, "Why? Is he ready for me?" She said, "No, but he's going to work you in, but come with me." And I said, "Why?" And she said, "Just come with me." So I got up and I followed her into the orthodontist's private office, and they had me sit in the private office by myself because I was the only white kid in the waiting room. And I didn't want to leave the waiting room. I saw no reason for my needing to leave the waiting room. But that really unsettled me, and that is something that has stuck with me my entire life.
I read quite a bit, and I remember reading a book about Frederick Law Olmsted. Is the name sound familiar? I see some heads bobbing. Central Park, Brooklands Park, the Capitol grounds of Washington, D.C., a great American author. Olmsted, in a trip through Virginia, crossed over this old wooden bridge, and soon after crossing it, he saw a stack of lumber ready to put on the train. And I was reading that, where could that have been? He was crossing the North Anna River, the river landing at Hewlett. I go, wow, that's my whole area. So you mean to tell me that my folk didn't pick cotton? They cut lumber? Not very glamorous occupation, I must say. Not that cotton picking was very glamorous anyway. But to a great extent, I grew up in a community where not much had changed, because my dad worked at a lumber mill in Beaver Dam. My grandfather ran a small sawmill on his property. My first job was working in lumber.
When I was approached about being on this panel, I thought to myself, I can't really think of much to say about my early life in Ashland regarding interaction with the Black community or any issues regarding racial bias. No Black girls attended my ballet class. No Black person sat next to me at the fountain at Barnes Drugstore. And certainly no Blacks were present downstairs at the Ashland Theater, where my white friends and I hung out. I didn't really think much about the fact that there was a separate Black theater on Railroad Avenue, which Dr. Gilpin referred to, where in the early segregated days, a reel would be shown at the white theater and then carried over to the Black theater, known as the Cab Theater, to be shown an hour or so later. And I never thought twice about my grandfather segregating his maid in the back part of his home, relegated to using her own back stairs and entrance, or that white students only attended Henry Clay Elementary and Black students John M. Gandy.
In the first year of varsity ball, we won 2 ball games. It's amazing how brilliant I became as a coach the following year when integration took place. I think the tallest person on the team that I coached before was about 6'2". I inherited a 6'8" center named Perry Robinson, a 6'5" center named Dennis Jackson, who was probably the most powerful man I ever coached, and a 6'3" forward named Sam Smith that probably could out-jump the other 2. And when you put them in the same team on the same floor with Eddie Webb, who was taken into the first Hall of Fame here at Patrick Henry, and Jamie Taylor, we were quite a team. And within 2 years, we were actually playing in the regionals. But I think a lot of people think it was just because of that. I think it was my brilliance.
One day I was going to the library, and you had to walk up these 3 little steps. And there were 3 white boys standing there. They told me go around. And I was like, excuse me? They said, go around. I said, no, I'm not going around. I'm going up these steps right here. So one boy had the audacity and the nerve and the stupidity to put his hands on me. He pushed me. I had a brother, a cousin, and another cousin. And I played with them. They were all boys. Whatever I had in my hand, I dropped. I was ready to fight. I was. My mother said that respect is earned, and I was going to get respect that day. When he put his hand on me, I kicked him. And then I went to my stance. But thank God Mama never ever told that story because I didn't get sent to the office, okay? But the thing was, you know what? They got out of my way. I went up those steps, and I went to the library.
Our topic for this year is life in the community. Each of our 6 panelists will share their story of growing up in Ashland and Hanover County. Following our panelists, we'll hear from Dr. Janelle S. Wilson, Dean of the University of Richmond School of Professional and Continuing Studies, and former Superintendent of Hanover County Public Schools, She'll help us to put all of these stories into context and fit them into our broader history. Last but not least, the Community Gospel Choir, directed by Bubba Johnson, will get our hands clapping and our feet stomping with rousing music to end our program. But to begin with, our first storyteller is Chick Utley. Chick has lived in Ashland and Montpelier all of his life. He grew up on Henry Clay Road across the street from the house where his mother was born and raised. Early on, Chick was fascinated by the world of electronics. That led to his early career in IT, with several Richmond corporations. In 2005, Chick made a move into the real estate business. Chick is married to Rachel Plaster, who remembers seeing him for the first time when she was in the second grade at Henry Clay Elementary School. That's so nice, so wonderful. They raised their daughter, Carrie, in Ashland and Montpelier. Before returning to Ashland, visits from their two grandsons are now a highlight. Chick is an active member of Hudson Baptist Church. Welcome, Chick.
You know, when I look back to the 50s, 60s, and 70s, I have to smile because I had a great childhood. And I can't blame one single personality defect of mine on either my mom or dad, which drives the psychoanalyst guys nuts. My mom was great. She always thought it was more important to be part of my life than it was to have a spanking clean ice. She was the type of mom that when we get out the front yard and start playing croquet, she got the biggest kick, not from winning the game, but from having the opportunity to send my croquet ball all the way across Henry Clay Road on a penalty shot. My mom made others laugh, and they laughed a lot. My dad was the opposite. He was the strict one. And I guess he learned that when he was captain in the Army during World War II. Dad had his first stroke when he was only 33 years old. And it made his speech slur to the point where I was ashamed to bring friends over to my house. But the lessons he taught me with that slurred speech have stuck with me throughout the years. My dad died when I was 18 years old, and his death kind of forced me to grow up almost overnight. But as a kid, my domain was Henry Clay Road. From the railroad tracks to Sneed Street, free to roam and ride my bike. My cousin Chuck Goshen lived across the street in the same house that my mom was actually born. And all my friends lived within a couple of blocks. Now back in those days, there wasn't a front door locked on the block. So it was nothing for one of the adults to come home and see someone else's kid sitting in their living room having a sandwich or something. Chuck's dad was my Uncle Charlie, and Uncle Charlie owned the electrical service company on Thompson Street, right across from the old town hall. And that man could fix anything. One time, he built a go-kart for Chuck, and I remember Uncle Charlie wanted to test drive that thing one evening in the dark. So right out on Thompson Street he went. But for some reason, he didn't even think about not having put the brakes on the darn thing. And he just barely wore at the bottom of his shoes trying to stop. I also felt sorry for Chuck because usually around the Goshen house, they never ate supper before 7 p.m. because Uncle Charlie was usually still like fixing something for somebody. I remember Uncle Charlie going out at 5 a.m. on a cold Christmas morning to get a furnace working for two elderly sisters that needed heat in that big old house. Uncle Charlie was that type. He was always there when needed. Like many kids in Ashland, I had the honor of growing up in Duncan Memorial Methodist Church. Mrs. Basket was one of my Sunday school teachers, and I think she probably was a Sunday school teacher for half of Ashland. I can still remember her asking me, how did Jesus carry the one missing sheep home when he found him? And my answer was, by the tail. She laughed and always reminded me of that every time I saw her later in life. I also had the opportunity to be a part of the boys and men's choir at St. James Episcopal Church, and actually got paid to go in church and sing. Now, what 8-year-old can turn that down? And we filled the choir up. People like Nancy Jones, Stuart Goodwin, Pat Orr, Mike Dooley, Chuck Goshen, Doug Stimson, even the Style Boys were in there. High school guys like Wade Stimson, Bobby Cool, and some of the dads like Frank Stinson or Sidney Orr, and Sidney Orr had the most beautiful tenor voice you ever heard in your life. The choir gave me an opportunity to sing a solo broadcast nationwide from a national cathedral on Christmas Eve. And we even got to go to New York to stay at the Waldorf Astoria while General MacArthur was living in the penthouse. With Mom having to work, I learned early on in life how to make breakfast and get myself to school on time. But Mom kept tabs on everything. That woman had developed a network of informers who delivered status reports on my brother and me at speeds that would baffle news organizations, even today. And while I hear people say that their parents either didn't care or would whip the tide, all my mom had to do was give me that look and say, boy, I'm disappointed in you. Believe me, Dad's belt buckle never felt as painful as when Mama would say that she was disappointed in me. As a teenager, I had the opportunity to work. We needed to get a permit to do so, but if you really wanted to work and your parents were in favor of it, work was available. My first real job was running the concession stand at the old Ashland Theater. Earl and Maddie Stone were the ones that ran the place. We stored the candy in a walk-in bank-style vault because it was always cool, and the chocolate wouldn't melt. But you could have bought me for a nickel when I found out that the butter we used on the popcorn was really coconut oil and it was colored orange. It may not have been healthy, but man, it was good. Earl Stone ended up being my first golfing buddy. Now, neither one of us could afford the price of going to the new Hanover Country Club, so Mr. Stone would come pick me up and it was off to par 3 we'd go. Now, I don't remember what scores we would shoot. We lied about them anyway. But as long as the other person had one more stroke, it was a good day. Unfortunately, though, I remember when Mr. Stone suffered what would be a fatal heart attack as he was watching the launch of the Apollo mission that would be the first to land on the moon. But Mr. and Miss Stone were more than my bosses. They were my friends. As I started high school, I became interested in the Ashland Volunteer Rescue Squad. They had a junior squad member program, and I knew some of the senior members of the real squad. People like Joe Atkins, Walter Christian, Charlie Balls, and others. They taught us kids how to treat injured or sick people. And that was something I really liked. And while Lux Chevrolet would donate a new truck every other year, it was up to us to convert those carry-alls into real ambulances. So we learned to do other constructive types of things without spending a lot of money. When my brother joined the Ashland Volunteer Fire Department, I wanted to be like him. But I was too young, so I just hung around the fires doing anything I could to help until I was old enough to join. I scrubbed fire hoses, washed fire trucks until they shined like new, and I'd sit in the driver's seat thinking of the time when I'd be able to muscle that truck through the middle of town, lights ablazing and siren blaring. And when I finally became of age and was officially able to join, man, I was so proud that when I got to hang my turnout coat on the hook just above my own fire boots. I'd made it. I was a fireman. I share these stories because the men and women who serve others became my heroes. While most of my friends looked up to the Mickey Mantles of the Yankees, the Bill Russells of the Celtics, and the Joe Namaths of the Jets as their heroes, for me it was people like Chief James Kelly, Hanover's fire chief, who inspired me to do things I never thought I could do, and John Gordon, who was a member of the school board and board of supervisors, as he not only led the Hanover County to the best schools in the world while controlling growth, John also demonstrated an amazing ability to get the most out of our tax dollars. And he did this after defending America in Vietnam. Charlie Bob White was a teacher and coach at Patch Henry, who was the first one to flunk me. And then he worked hard to set me straight so I wouldn't waste my life. And my friend Roy Anderson, the first black deputy sheriff in Hanover County, with whom I rode countless hours in his patrol car as he protected the western half of Hanover County, most of the time as the only officer of the law on duty. Each one ready to serve, and if necessary, to die to protect or rescue these perfect strangers that would call for help. I was so blessed to have these heroes like this to look up to. I'd like to quickly close with two stories of the two heroes that really shaped my life. Due to his poor health, my dad never made $100 a week in his life, but we didn't realize we were poor. I remember my mom wanted a stereo so that she could play the 3 or 4 records she owned. Well, Dad found one at the old Western Auto Store in Ashland, but to get it, he had to put it on layaway and pay a few dollars each week. Now, my dad really loved coffee, but when he went to work in Richmond, there was this little dive that he would have a couple of cups of coffee and read the paper each morning before going to work. Dad loved my mom so much that he saved that money that he would have spent on his coffee until he could surprise her with that stereo she wanted. It was a sacrifice that taught me that nothing should stand in the way when you love someone like my dad loved my mom. As I shared earlier, my mom worked, and her last job was working for the state of Virginia's ABC board. And back then, women never made the money that a man would make for doing the same job. But the time came when Mom had worked there long enough that her take-home pay was going to be more than Dad's paycheck. And my dad was a good man, but he was also a proud man. And Mama knew how Dad would feel if he thought his wife made more money than he did. Dad was raised during a time where the man was the family's provider. So to keep Dad from knowing, Mom had the state take out enough money from each paycheck so that her check would always be $10 less than Dad's. That way, when she handed Dad the paycheck each week, he never knew that she made more than he did. And this continued until my dad died in 1971. Now, big being the dumb old self-centered, stupid country boy that I am, one day I had to ask her why she did that. And with a look in her eyes that I'll never forget, she said, "Knowing I made more than he did would have killed your father. And I loved him so." Now, friends, that was love. You know, maybe all of these things would have happened in another time or at another time, but it didn't. I've lived long enough to understand that Jesus used my mom and dad to teach me about love and sacrifice. I guess that's why I cry when a friend dies, be they human or animal. Earlier this month, my wife Rachel and I got to celebrate our 48th wedding anniversary. And this life of blessing and love would not have been possible without my daughter Carrie and my 2 grandsons, Ted and Travis, to share it with me. Without a doubt, I am totally convinced that the words of an old Beatles song, made popular during my time, has come true. All you need is love. For me, it just happened to have happened in Ashland, in Hanover County. By the grace of God, I'm still blessed with a wonderful family and a whole bunch of friends of every race, color, or creed that call Virginia their home. Thank you for letting me share tonight, and stay safe, and may God bless.
Thank you, sir. Our second storyteller is Brenda Rebecca Johnson Gatlin. Brenda was born in the Hanover community of Noel. She attended Gumson Tree School until it closed, and then transferred to John M. Gandy. Under the Freedom of Choice program, Brenda transferred to Patrick Henry High School and graduated in 1969. It was at home in her church, Mount Carmel Baptist Church in Noel, that Brenda began to sing in a choir and to speak publicly. Brenda briefly attended VCU for art, but quit to take a job with the United States Post Office. Next, she moved to the Juvenile and Domestic Relations District Court and retired after 34 years. After caring for her mother, Brenda and her sister reside at the family home place. She is surrounded in community by her family. Here is Brenda's story.
Good evening. Hello, my name is Brenda Johnson Gatlin, born May 4th, 1951 in Noel, or Noel, Virginia, a small rural community between Doswell and Beaver Dam in northwestern Hanover County. In 1957, I started school at an all-black Gumtree, one-room school, attending the first grade. and then off I went to the second grade at John M. Gandy Elementary School. I would like to point out that though the schools may have been inferior in school supplies and accommodations, the teachers really cared about and looked after their students, and that made a big difference. Here are some points I want to share with you. 1, what life was like in Noel, Virginia. 2, how school integration made me feel. 3, how religion and church made me strong. And 4, where I stand today. Noel, or some people call it Noel, was a mixed community where whites and blacks coexisted together, yet separately, each knowing their place in society. The train that ran through Noel was the main transportation to and from Ashland and Richmond. The train was also how we got our mail. It would slow down just enough to hang the mail bag on a hook where Mr. Will Anderson or his wife, Mrs. Percy Anderson, the postmistress and postmaster, would pick it up, take it home, the home was the post office, then sort it and distribute it. At Christmas time, Mr. and Mrs. Anderson allowed the black children to help stamp the hundreds of cards sent around the world with the famous Noel stamp with the 2 angels. We would be rewarded with giant apples and oranges. Church was another integral part of my upbringing that I totally thought was awesome. Our parents not only sent us to Sunday school and church, but taught us the Bible stories, how to pray, and distinguish between right and wrong. Church was a place where we learned to respect ourselves and others, especially our elders. I remember spending the summer with my uncle in New Jersey. All the young people I had met there responded to the adults with a flat yes or no. When I returned home, my mother asked me if I had an explanation for not adding ma'am or sir to my responses to her and Dad. I couldn't think of one, so I knew then that I couldn't try that again. Lots of people influenced me at church, like Mrs. Louise Adams, Deacon Edwin Thompson, Mrs. Gwendolyn Drayton, Mrs. Eva Carter, and even my mother, Mrs. Elsie Johnson, who was the church organist for over 60 years, and my grandmother, Mrs. Gladys Chappelle, who was church clerk for over 40 years. These folk always had something for me to do. I started singing in the junior choir at age 6. At age 16, I joined the baddest all-girl gospel singing group in all Hanover County, the Echoes. It consisted of my mother, Mrs. Elsie Johnson, my aunt, Mrs. Beatrice Johnson, Mrs. Gwen Drayton, and later my younger sister, Carolyn Johnson. We made many appearances at local churches, schools, jails, and anywhere we could share the love of Jesus. We sang in and around cities and towns in the state of Virginia, as well as Washington, D.C., Maryland, and Pennsylvania. Even appeared on numerous times on TV in Richmond and D.C. I was not a part of the students who initially integrated the schools in Hanover County. I had cousins, Kathy and Ed Jr. Thompson, who were the first to integrate Beaver Dam Elementary. I came along as part of the Freedom of Choice program, where parents could choose which school to send their children. Along with my brother and my younger sister, who are here today, we chose to attend the white schools. My older sister decided to stay at Gandy with her friends. So I started Patrick Henry in the 10th grade. The school bus was very crowded, and we had difficulty with students allowing us to have a seat. The white girls didn't say much, but the white boys would throw spitballs, pluck us, and call us the N-word, or blackies. The term black was as derogatory a term as an N-word is today. It really surprised the white students at the time when we embraced the word black. Soul singer James Brown had come out with a song that my cousin Allie loved to shout when he slid on the bus and pimped his way down the aisle, shouting his newfound slogan, "Say it loud." And our uniformed rhythmic response was, "I'm black and I'm proud." My first days at Patrick Henry were interesting. On the first day, the homeroom teacher refused to call my name. Off to the office I marched and was immediately escorted back to the homeroom by the principal, who you could see was clearly arguing with the teacher outside the classroom. This kind of stuff lasted about 2 or 3 weeks. I must say that I stayed in the principal's office, me, for name calling and fights on the school bus, my cousin Alvin Johnson being my defender. Textbooks were favorite missiles thrown on the school bus. At one particular time, I was hit on a tiny bone behind my ear with a hardback book, and it hurt like crazy. I immediately threw the book out the window, and the bus driver did everything in his power to have me get off the bus to retrieve it. But I pictured myself left on some lonely country road, walking 10 miles home in the dark. Things did settle down somewhat, and I graduated from Patrick Henry High School. One event that I'm proud of occurred in my art class. We class were selected to pick the name of the new junior high school and its mascot. I came up with the name Liberty, and another student came up with the mascot name, the Eagles. I was told that we would share in a $50 bond, but never received it. Our class went on a field trip to DC. I had no friends at the time. However, there was a young girl who was probably told to be my friend, and she was for that day. We visited museums and all sites one took in on a DC tour. Standing on the United States Capitol building steps, I was accosted by a grown white man who jerked me and my friend apart and said, "Is that what you want?" and started to rant and rave about God knows what. We eventually laughed about it, but it wasn't funny at all. I was a child, and it scared me, and that white girl too. I now know I've got to let my own prejudices go. Let it go, Brenda. Upon graduation, some people considered me a black hippie. I quit VCU after obtaining an art scholarship. I had created a portfolio of my artwork and took it to VCU admin office, and they quickly said, "You're in." But I soon quit school, needed to make some money. I had many adventures, traveling, riding motorcycles, and even had a souped-up Camaro that I loved to drive. I worked for the post office for several years, obtained my FCC license to become a radio television broadcaster, and was a courtroom deputy clerk for several district court judges, including the very first black female judge in the Commonwealth of Virginia, the Honorable Judge Angela Roberts. My bestest friend, Mary Jane Davenport, G., who was a probation officer at the Richmond G&D Court, turned me on to the position at the courthouse, and so there I was. I retired after 34 years of service, having suffered a benign brain tumor, a meningioma, and a subdural hematoma on the brain in 2013. Soon thereafter, I suffered a stroke, and I had thyroid cancer. Now I've carried lung cancer without surgery nor medication for the past 5 years. To God be the glory.
Thank you, thank you. And I'd just like to say, I have visited Mount Carmel Baptist Church many occasions. I had no idea that I was in Noel, and I'm sure there's other communities that I visited that I have no idea what the names are, so I'm learning a lot through this program. Next we will hear from Frank Hartwell Jr. Frank was born and raised in Hanover. He graduated from the University of Virginia and the University of Richmond School of Law. Frank has served as Hanover County's clerk, clerk of circuit court since 2000. Prior to that, he was a practicing attorney and an executive with the A.W. Hargrove Insurance Agency, Incorporated. Frank is founding member of the Board of Managers of the Patrick Henry Family YMCA. He also served on the Board of Directors of the Greater Richmond chapter of the American Red Cross. Frank and his wife Elizabeth live in Ashland. They have 3 grown children and 3 grandchildren. Frank, would you share your story with us? Thank you.
From my earliest days, I was interested in people, history, politics, and my community, just like my father and grandfather. And those interests influenced my experience growing up. In 1956, when I was born, Hanover was still lightly populated and people were spread out. I started out in Elmont. Our house was on an unpaved road about half a mile off of Cedar Lane. The road didn't have a name, just a route number. Most of the time, there were few kids, aside from my brother, sister, and me, living on that road. Our house was connected by paths through the woods to the houses belonging to my grandparents, my Uncle John and Aunt Esther, and to my great aunt, Sis in Columbia. Our Hargrove family village, if you will, was along an especially beautiful part of the Chickahominy River at its fall line, where I spent a lot of time playing. Back then, the river water was clear and full of sunfish nests during the summer. My father spun fanciful tales about the river that he told my sister, brother, and me. So my world was filled with magical places like Bobolink, Big Rock, and Mr. Wolf's Cave. Bike riding wasn't much fun on the gravel road, but we had a little barn and a pasture where we kept ponies and horses with names like Hootenanny, Domino, Trigger, Sandpiper, and Stormy. My first pony, Cutie Pie, was only 41 inches tall when measured to the withers, not much bigger than our dog, Wolf. Much of my time was spent on horseback riding with other kids and lots of dogs. I never played Little League baseball. A day of riding might include races, jumping obstacles on our make-believe cross-country course, imagining I was Paul Revere, or swimming with our ponies in ponds. I would ride to my grandparents' house and tie up and watch television with my uncle. There was lots of time back then for independent play. When I was around 9 years old, my sister and another kid and me rode our ponies 5 or so miles up the abandoned bed of the Ashland-Richmond trolley car line to the home of Vernell Vaughn, who lived at 502 Virginia Street. There, we shared lunch before riding home again. You wouldn't find a 9-year-old riding a pony, 5 miles away from home today. Mrs. Vaughn was the 4th grade teacher at Elmont Elementary School. In 1962, I started school at Elmont. It was the same school my dad attended. We had the same 1st grade teacher, Inez White. She didn't like my father, and I think I always thought she took it out on me. In any case, Elmont was the last 4-room, 4-grade white frame schoolhouse for white kids in Hanover County. 6-year-olds rode the same bus as high school students, and you instinctively knew to keep your head down. High schoolers like to talk about exotic subjects like elopement or the trouble their friends had gotten into with the law. The social ferment of those years before integration was faintly reflected by the number of dog-eared copies of a book that many of the older kids carried entitled Black Like Me, or by the girls in the back of the bus who sang Peter, Paul, and Mary songs in the afternoon. It was a life set against the refrain from If I Have a Hammer. Unlike today, kids typically started 1st grade not knowing their letters or their numbers. Some of us could recite the alphabet, count a little. So far as I could tell, none of us could read or write. By Thanksgiving, we were off to a pretty good start. One of the first orders of business after starting 1st grade was the assignment of jobs for the year. I fully expected a prestigious assignment and was angry when Miss White announced that I was to carry the scrap bucket around after lunch and collect uneaten food that was to be fed to the school janitor, Mr. Shellhorse's pigs. I bounced back from that early setback and became good at collecting half-eaten bologna sandwiches. I love my 4 years at Old Elmont, especially the 4th grade, where my teacher, who I mentioned earlier, Mrs. Vaughn, encouraged my love of history, which had a different flavor back then. 1965 was the Civil War centennial, and that meant pondering the lives of cherished figures like Robert E. Lee and Stonewall Jackson, in addition to George Washington and Patrick Henry. Dixie seemed to be some sort of secondary national anthem, as we were told more than once to stand when it was played. I didn't see any conflict between my interest in the Civil War and my views on the Civil Rights Movement that I heard about on WRVA radio and discussed with my dad. By 4th grade, I thought the school should be integrated. My family employed white and black people to perform jobs, including caring for me. My grandfather and father's insurance business had white and black customers. If they paid the premiums in person, they went to my grandparents' house because that's where his office was located. Or they came to our house. By the time I was 10, experience had taught me everybody could get along great. 60 plus years ago, boys were expected to be useful. Unhappily for me, my 2nd grade teacher wrote on my report card, "Frank is moody and lazy." My dad apparently agreed with her. When I was about 11 or 12, Dad informed me ominously that I needed to learn how to work. He accomplished that by assigning my brother Stuart and me to help an extremely hard-working fellow that he respected and frequently employed named John Edwards, with whatever job Mr. Edwards was doing for him. Sometimes that meant on Saturdays, Dad dropped Stuart and me off around 7:30 in the morning at Mr. Edwards' shop at the corner of Lewistown Road and Route 1. Mr. Edwards would drive us to our job site, sometimes 4 people in the cab of a truck, no seat belts. We'd work, eat our lunch of crackers and Vienna sausage or potted meat under a tree, and then work past dark. It was exactly what my dad had in mind. I was worthless, except for the most rudimentary manual labor, and there was plenty of that. But I learned to move fast when called to do something, to never complain, never say I was tired, and to never, ever ask about quitting time. I also came to respect how hard people work to make it in life. In 1966, New Elmont School opened, and I started 5th grade there. Not all the windows had been installed in the school by the time that it started, but no matter. By October, the building was finished. That year, what is known as token integration by some, which was a means by which school segregation could continue while the administration could argue that it was complying with the law, came to Elmont. There were 2 black students in my class. I hope their experience was good. It would have been tough for me to integrate John and Candy. I remained all in for full school desegregation. In 7th grade, one of my teachers, Ashley Ricks, injected the discussion of politics and any other subjects into either our health or science class. The freewheeling give and take was right up my alley. I recall Mr. Ricks asking us once who we favored for president. I think there were 2 votes for Humphrey, around 4 for Nixon, and the rest of the class was for George Wallace. My classes with Mr. Ricks were rivaled only by my history class that was taught, I think, by Ole May Hope, who was a legendary teacher in part because of the paddle she wielded. The education of Frankie Hargrove Jr. continued in 1968-69 when my dad promoted building Hanover Airport. I attended a couple of planning commission and board of supervisor meetings with him when the airport was being considered. Many of the residents of Brown Grove were worried about the impact of an airport on their community, and they turned out in large numbers to voice their concerns. As a little boy or a young kid, I stood against the wall in packed meeting rooms and listened to people who were scared about having everything that they had worked for in life jeopardized by an airborne. It made a powerful impression upon me. When the schools were fully integrated in 1969, I wasn't there. My parents sent me to an independent boys' school in Richmond, from which I graduated in 1974. My connection to Hanover County wasn't broken. I worked summer jobs at great places, like the car station at Gerald Struck Plaza. While I didn't know anything about car mechanics, probably couldn't have taught, the lessons I learned earlier about working for long hours without complaints stood me in good stead when it came to pumping gas. Today, I'm filled with gratitude for my good fortune in life. The lessons I learned in my youth from my family, and the people I got to know from all walks of life, who were, by and large, kind, caring, decent, and hardworking, oftentimes while enduring unfair treatment at the hands of society, have made me who I am today.
Thank you, Frank. Our fourth speaker is Barbara Leonard Dickinson. Barbara was raised in Hanover. She married William Dickinson, Jr. in 1978. They lived in Chesterfield before moving to Hanover Courthouse in 1979 to raise their two boys. Barbara graduated with an associate degree from Shawan Junior College in 1976, and now is working on her BA in Biblical Studies, Christian Education in Calvary Chapel University. Her goal is to obtain her bachelor's degree before she reaches the age of 80. After 42 years with Bank of America in what is now Atlantic Union Bank, Barbara retired in 2019. Barbara coordinated most of the Patrick Henry High School 1974 classroom unions and thinks fondly of her school years. She still owns land in Hanover. Barbara enjoys her home in Nelson County and traveling with her husband. Barbara, please.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Yes, and my name is Barbara Leonard Dickinson. That's Barbara Jean when I was growing up. I was born in 1956, the middle of 5 children, and 2 of my sisters are here, Patricia and Cheryl. We lived in an old house on Hickory Oaks Farm and just near Patrick Henry High School. Our closest neighbors were Jimmy and Cynthia C. Jimmy helped my dad around the farm, and he could fix anything. Cynthia had an open door policy when it came to hospitality, and her cooking was legendary. Across the west field were the Winstons and the Bradleys, and to the east, the Millers. Those were our closest neighbors until reaching the main road. The way to Route 54 was down the hilly dirt road, past the Miller's house and beside Alton's store, in business at that time. I remember we shared a party line with Mr. Alton. I can't remember the phone number, but it either started with AT, Atlantic, or SW Swift, and 4 numbers after that. No area codes or zip codes were then. I didn't have many neighbors in my younger years. My playmates were my siblings, and my best friends were my cats and dogs in the house. Nell Bradley worked in our home, helping Mom manage the household and the kids. I remember watching Nell polish silver and silverware. We didn't have stainless steel back then, so everything had to be polished. When Nell got the clothes ready to wash and iron, she would take a Coke bottle, put warm water in it, and close it up with a sprinkling top. Then she would dampen each piece using her sprinkler system and roll the garment up to keep it damp until it was ready to be ironed. Far cry from today's convenience of wrinkle-free fabrics. But back then, everything was reusable. We didn't have paper towels or paper napkins. We used linens, which needed to be ironed and washed and ironed as well. Our first dishwasher connect the water hose to the spigot, put the drain hose in the sink, and watch the hot water steam up the rim. In the 1960s, my dad subdivided some of the land and created a new road to Route 54. The Covingtons were the first to build, and they quickly became part of our close-knit community. Mr. Covington managed the newly established Hanover Country Club, an all-white club which became a big part of my family's social life. I fondly remember when I was young, gathering around the campfire and having homemade Brunswick stew there. And on snowy days when we could get to the club, sledding down the hilly fairways with friends from town. Life was the club, but we couldn't go during the summer until we had finished picking the beans and the other vegetables in the garden. The closest place for entertainment was Ashland Theater. I can smell the popcorn now. Miss Stone seemed to run the place because she would walk up and down the aisles yelling for people to be quiet and sit up. When I was 5, I went to Mrs. Miguet's all-white kindergarten, and after finishing there, to Henry Clay Elementary School. In 3rd grade, I witnessed history in the making when Alvin Jackson, Margarita Redding, and Margaret Timberlake joined our class, the first Black students in our previously all-white school. The girls were wonderful friends all the way through high school. In my 7th year, Henry Clay students were bused from Henry Clay to Elmont Elementary. The only thing I remember about that year was being paddled by our red-headed teacher, Ms. Hope, and our paddle had holes in it. I attended the old Gandy High School in Ashland for 8th and 9th grade, which had been renamed Liberty Junior High. Schools were fully integrated by then, and the new Liberty Middle School was under construction to handle the growing population. Our school leaders, Lemuel Vick, the principal, and Frank Como, the vice principal, followed us from Liberty to Patrick Henry. At Liberty, I spent time in the principal's office, not because I was in trouble, but to assist in the office and respectfully challenge the rules. One memorable moment in junior high was when I tried to change the dress code to allow for hot pants to be worn, arguing they covered more than the miniskirts which were in fashion. Girls were not allowed to wear pants until I was in high school. I modeled the hot pants and even submitted a formal proposal explaining the problem with the girls using the water fountain and how hot pants would be better for that situation than others, but my efforts fell short. In high school, there was an old tradition, senior student day. During my senior year, the administration frowned upon and warned against students skipping school. Well, a few of us, 2 couples, decided we didn't want to break a fine tradition, so we skipped and spent a beautiful day at Bryant Park. I had told my mother the plan beforehand. She evidently had no problem keeping that tradition and wrote a note for me to give to the office. Well, the next day, we were summoned over the loudspeaker by name, and I remember I was in Reverend Bowles' class at that time when it happened. We knew we were in for it. I remember we were lectured, and then I told them that my mom knew what I was doing and handed the note over. I think Mr. Big and Mr. Combo may have kept their professional faces, but I always sensed they secretly admired our spirit. I don't remember any one of us being punished. During the summer before my junior year, I was hired by the school board at $1.15 an hour, mending student books that were going to be used the following year in each Hanover school. I really got good with the blue tape mending corners and spots. In my senior year, I left school during the week to work in the school board office. And at that point in time, I wanted to be just like the administrative assistant to the superintendent. I took high school business classes with Ms. Presley. with the goal of entering the workforce immediately after graduation. But my father convinced me to try college just for 1 year. So I applied and was accepted to Chewan Junior College, where several of Patch Perry football players went. And fellow graduate Webb Cannon and I headed to Murfreesboro, North Carolina for 2 years, which I wouldn't trade for anything. Webb played a pivotal role in my life by telling me that bank tellers made a lot of money and I should contact his father at First Emergence Bank after graduating from Chewan. I thought Mr. Buchanan was the president of the bank at that point. That's all I knew about banking. He was so kind and gathered me to interview downtown for a position beyond branch work. His guidance led to a successful 40-plus year career in the financial service industry. Looking back and growing up in Ashland countryside, I had a pretty simple upbringing, a lot of friends, but very few close ones. I didn't see any color differences in my classmates and wondered why anyone would. My school leaders supported and challenged me. I was not in any way the most talented student. I didn't win any awards, nor did I play any sports. Oh, yes, I did. I was a splinter picker on the basketball team 1 year. It took me a while, but I soon realized that my parents weren't as dumb as I thought they were. And many times, looking back, I can say I had a guardian angel by my side. A few reflective moments here, memories. Sneaking out of Duncan Memorial Church with the 25 cents that was supposed to go into offering, and I went to Haas and bought placing pennies on the train track near Macon and watched them be flattened when the train goes by. Wearing POW bracelets and peacefully protesting the war in high school. Asking my dad about dating a black boy. His response, though expected, didn't stop me from having diverse friendships. Put the dime in a payphone and ringing twice, hanging up, and waiting for mom to pick me up. That saved us money until my dad said we were ripping off the phone company. Competing but rarely winning, yet always pushing forward, giving my best, and learning to be content with the outcome. These moments, big and small, help make me who I am, and I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to share good memories with you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Pamela Sokol will be our next speaker. Pamela is a lifelong resident of Hanover County, a 41-year resident of the town of Ashland, and a 1972 graduate of Patrick Henry High School. She grew up in the Brown Grove Rural Historic District, a historically African-American community located south of the town of Ashland. Pamela currently serves as Town of Ashland Council member, a member of the Downtown Ashland Association as a liaison, Ashland Market Partnership liaison. She serves as the Board of Zoning Appeals liaison. She serves the Ashland Kiwanis Board member and as club director. She's a secretariat for the Virginia Board member, and as a certified planning commissioner. As you can tell, Pamela is very busy. And so we welcome her as she shares her story with us. Thank you, Pamela.
Good afternoon. I'm Pamela Sokol. I grew up in the Brown Grove Rural Historic District, a historically African-American community located south of the town of Ashland. I lived with my mother, father, and 2 brothers. My father built the house we lived in, and it is listed in the National Register of Historic Places. Brown Grove was a neighborhood where people took care of their homes and their yards. Some farmed chickens, pigs, etc. We spent lots of time outside. Neighbors and relatives helped each other. If we did something wrong, an adult corrected us, and then still told our parents when they got home. My parents taught us respect. We were no better than anyone else, and no one else was better than we were. We sat together to eat. Our parents did not allow us to leave the table until we asked permission. We were taught that when you enter a room, speak. When you finish with your chair, put it under the table. When you leave the room, leave the door as you find it. We had one black and white TV that we had to share. Respect for our elders was a must. We were not allowed to call an adult by their first name. It was always Mrs., Miss, or Mr. For many years, my mother worked at the Ashland shirt factory. Other women in the community worked there also. My father worked at a paper factory and was a truck driver for Rich Food Dairy until his health failed. Even though they both worked full-time, they stayed on top of everything and made sure we completed our homework. They stayed in contact with teachers and bus drivers to see if we were behaving as we should. I had hoped that working full-time would take their attention off us. No. My mother was not a disciplinarian. We got away with everything. But my father was very strict and taught me lessons for life. While I was growing up, I resisted many of his teachings. It wasn't until I got older and became a parent that I knew how right he was about everything. One important lesson he taught me is to try turning negatives into positives. Never had a chance to tell him how much I appreciated all he poured into me. I had only been a parent for 3 years before he passed away due to complications of diabetes. The small circle of friends in my community included children I attended church with. Every year, our church took a trip to the beach. I think it was Buckrow Beach. I was excited because I got to go somewhere during the summer. We went to church on Sundays. That is my mother, my 2 brothers, and myself. My father was not a church-going person until I reached the age of 15. When I was 15 years old, my father accepted Jesus Christ. During the week, it was all about getting off the bus, getting our homework done, and doing chores before anything else. There was never any compensation for doing those things because those things were expected of us. After dinner, we played volleyball, baseball, football, etc. with parents and children. On Sunday afternoons, we went to baseball games. I attended John and Gandy School from 1st through 7th grade. In my experience at Gandy was good. I had teachers who really wanted me to do my best work and helped me all they could. I remember Mr. Bud Dabney driving our school bus to pick us up on Ashgate Road. And then he went all the way down to Sliding Hill Road and came back up the highway to Gandy. I thought that was a long ride, and I didn't understand why we would be taking that route. Later, I understood that it was due to segregation. In September 1967, I attended Patrick Henry High School, which was a big adjustment transitioning from an all-black school. Lots of new faces. I remember walking into a language arts class, and I didn't know where to sit. A student was waving his hand vigorously and pointing to the chair behind him, saying, "Sit here, sit here." I sat there, and I will say, I met someone who was my best friend throughout my whole time at Patrick Henry High School. His name was Herbie Boomhauer. After graduation, he moved to Hawthorne, California. We stayed in touch for a while, and then we just lost touch. I will never forget him. He made my adjustment so much easier. I had a tough time starting out in the college prep program in high school. I wanted to go to college to become an interior designer. The counselor I was assigned to did not show a desire to work with me and never gave me any guidance on going to college. I thought if a black counselor wasn't going to encourage or help me, who would? In fact, I didn't even think I could go to college anyway because I knew my parents couldn't afford it. The counselor suggested I switch from college prep to the business program and be prepared to get a job after graduating. I was warmly welcomed into the business program by Mrs. Presley, who gave me good guidance that prepared me for employment immediately after graduation. It wasn't until my daughter's senior year at Patrick Henry that I began to understand the financial aid process. I knew it was possible for anyone to go to college. After I got my daughter tucked away in college, I started focusing on my goal while preparing my youngest for pre-kindergarten. My daughter graduated with her bachelor's in 2005. I became an undergraduate in 2006, obtained a bachelor's degree in business management in 2010, and got my master's degree in education in 2012. Do not give up on your dream. In high school, I got an F on my report card in science, and I was totally stressed about having to bring that report card home. But somehow, on the ride home from school, that F turned into a B. When my father got home, my mom told him we had report cards. He looked at my report card, and then he looked at me. Then he looked at my report card again and asked me about the grade. He told me I was capable of much better work and to try harder. I met lots of new people and had mostly positive experiences. I remember how Melody Fox kept us laughing in the locker rooms we were getting ready for gym class. I remember Janice Jewell, who was fun to talk to every day. A girl named Debbie, who got on our school bus just before turning into Patrick Henry's driveway. She went to Irving's hair salon to get her hair done. I see Linda Cawthorn, Lane's sister, every once in a while. I see Sharon Shelton sometimes. John Betty, whose last name was Betty at one time, but is different now. And the list goes on. At Patrick Henry, kids came from different elementary schools, and I met so many people. Today, I stay in close contact with Rachel Mallory, Sandra Pryor, and others from our graduating class. That's the problem when you start naming people, you can't squeeze in all their names. During the first year at Patrick Henry, kids were talking about the annual. They were all excited about it, and I didn't know what it was, and I was afraid to ask because I thought someone would think I was dumb. I went home and asked my mother, what is an annual? I said, all the kids at school are talking about it, and they want one. My mother said, I don't know what that is. Later, I found out they were talking about a yearbook. When I was 17 years old, right after graduation, my dad took me to Dominion Chevrolet for my first car. Boy, was I excited. He helped me choose an affordable Chevrolet Vega. And then we went on to talk about financing. The man said payments will be $65 a month. I thought to myself, that's not bad. I think my dad can pay that. My dad looked at me and said, is that a good payment for you with your new job? All of a sudden, the excitement disappeared. I thought he was buying a car for me. Last thing, my fondest community memory is having our cousin Liz sit with us during summers while our parents worked. Not many people wanted to stay with us because we were a handful. Liz Harris, much love to you. Thank you.
The last storyteller today is Bernard Peterson. Like Pamela, Bernard was born in the Brown Grove community of Hanover County. He is a devoted Christian, Vietnam veteran, and retired management professional with a strong background in information systems. Over the course of his career, he held leadership roles in multiple companies, overseeing the design, development, and implementation of telecommunications systems. His expertise in streamlining processes, leading teams, and aligning technology with business needs played a key role in his success. Now retired, Bernard lives in Richmond and spends his time fishing, relaxing, and cherishing his family, especially his grandchildren. His faith in God remains the foundation of his life. Thank you, Bernard.
I grew up in Hanover County on Lewistown Road, which was better known as Bryan Road. I had 4 brothers, 2 sisters, and that community was an incredibly close-knit community, mostly made up of family. Everyone, both children and adults, were friends. Summers were filled with simple joys. I spent my days playing marbles with the other kids, riding my bike, even riding our billy goat, until the day he had enough and tried to run me into the side of the house. Needless to say, that was the last time I ever rode him. I would often ride my bike over my aunt and uncle's house. From there, we would ride to a local restaurant through a white neighborhood. During these rides, some people would sick vicious dogs on us. Eventually, we had enough. A few of us rode by, and when dogs chased us out of sight of their owner's house, others were waiting in the woods with baseball bats. The next time we passed by and they yelled "sick 'em," those dogs didn't move. Problem solved. In 1961, when I was 13, there was another white family living far off the road who had a pond. One day I saw the owner at the mailbox and asked if I could fish in the pond. He asked me several questions, including how old I was, what grade I was in. After I told him, he said, "I have a daughter your age." And we talked for a while. He then invited me to come over and fish anytime I wanted. His daughter would often come outside and sit in the yard. Several times she walked towards the pond. And whenever I saw her, I would quickly get on my bike and leave riding past her in the driveway. One day she walked along the tree line where I couldn't see her and approached me by the pond. She casually asked how the fishing was going. She just wanted to talk. After that, whenever I went fishing, she would come out and chat with me. In addition to fishing, I worked in the garden, helped my dad repair electronics like TVs, radios, and record players. My dad did this work not only for our home, but also for local stores in Ashland. However, due to the racial climate at that time, when we went to these stores, we had to enter through the back door at night. The store owners didn't want the white residents of Ashland to know a black man was fixing their electronics for fear of retribution. In 1963, after a long conversation between my mother and the Hanover County superintendent, I was allowed to attend Patrick Henry's summer school. On the first day, the teacher gave everyone a test. She called me to her desk and asked, "Why are you taking this class?" I had gotten a perfect score. I explained that I had attended enough classes to pass. After laughing and looking at my test paper, she said, "At least now I have an assistant." Every day after dismissal, I had to walk along Route 54 while others passed me in their cars. One day, a young lady from my class stopped and offered me a ride. As soon as I got in, she told me, "Slide down so no one could see me." I did as she said, but then she told me get even lower until I was nearly lying flat. She explained, "If my dad saw you in this car, he would kill you. And probably me too. Despite the danger, she picks me up every day after that. I always got out just before we reached Ashland, so no one could see me. One day, my teacher asked me to stay after class to help grade papers. I assumed I'd have to walk home, but to my surprise, the same young lady was waiting for me in the parking lot. The teacher wasn't surprised when she saw me get in the car. From then on, I walked out with my teacher and got into her car without hiding. In 1964, at just 16, I began driving a school bus for Hanover County. The buses were old, without heat, a rubber-banded brake, clutch, or gas pedals. Cold air rushed up my pants legs, so I stuffed old rags around the pedals to block the wind. These buses were unreliable. One time, the front wheel came completely off, driving the bus onto the axle. Other times, the brakes failed entirely. The buses broke down often, causing us to be late to school. One day, after the bus broke down around 4 p.m., the director of transportation picked me up in his truck. He said, "You've sent 5 buses to the graveyard." At that time, I was thinking, no, 6. I replied, "They should have been there before you gave them to us." He asked how long I had left in school. I told him I had 2 years, because I was only 16. So I had to wait in his office while the mechanic tried to fix the bus. After 3.5 hours, at 7:30 p.m., the mechanic came in and said he couldn't fix it. They had no more old buses to give me. The director of transportation told him to give me the new bus. The mechanic had to be told 3 times, and on the 3rd time, the director screamed, "Give it to him!" They assigned me a new bus. I drove it home, made 1 trip the next morning, but after that, the mechanic met me at the school and told me, "Get off the new bus and take the old one instead." Later that afternoon, I saw white students riding the brand new bus I had just been driving. After serving in Vietnam and leaving the Army, I returned home to Hanover County a changed man. I carried the lessons of my past with me, the struggles of segregation, the hardships of war, and used them to build a future for myself and my family. My faith, which has always been a guiding force, remain my foundation as I move forward into the next chapter of my life. Now, I want to thank everyone for giving me the opportunity to share some of my experiences growing up in Hanover County.
Thank you very much for that. And thanks to all of our 6 panelists. Let us show all of our panelists how much we appreciate them. All of you think about the stories that you just heard today. Many of you have stories that you need to tell, and you need to share with other people before those stories are gone. So we're going to ask you to write those stories down, to grab a cell phone and record them, and pass those stories on to the Ashland Museum so we can record it. When we originally started this program, the goal was it was a Black History program. But we wanted to get stories from people who we thought would be passed on in the near future. And years later, this program still continues, and you can still continue to come out because this is very valuable. And we want to hear your stories. We want to hear how people live in our communities. So again, we encourage you to participate by sharing your stories. Ask the elders in your community, ask elders in your family to write it down as well. And if they can't write, you sit there with the fellow cell phone and record their stories because they need to share their stories with us. And now I'd like to call on Dr. Janelle Wilson to sum up what she has heard from today and to put it into perspective to talk to us about where it all fits into Hanover's history. Dr. Wilson.
Well, good afternoon. I guess it's technically evening by now. Can you all hear me okay? Thank you all so much for being here this afternoon, and many thanks to our panelists for sharing your stories. To Mr. Peterson, thank you for your service to our country. And if there are other veterans on the panel, thank you all for your service, and also those in the audience. When I was asked to be here this evening and, kind of sum up what I've heard, and then hearing Mr. Keats' invitation to talk about how this fits into the bigger context, wow, we don't have that much time. But what I will say is to echo what Mr. Keats has just encouraged us to do. End of 2024 was very difficult for my family and me. We lost the last of my grandmother's generation, the last member of my grandmother's generation. And it occurred to me that with Aunt Myrtle's passing, she was from Birmingham, isn't that a great Southern name, Aunt Myrtle? And when she came to visit, by the time she left, I was talking just like her. But it occurred to me at her passing how much of our family's history has been lost. That I didn't take the opportunity, not that I didn't get a chance, but that I didn't take the opportunity to learn. That is an invitation to all of us to connect with those who are remaining in our families. Not just those who are octogenarians, or perhaps 90 or 100 years old, but all of our experiences weave together the tapestry of life. And so from the 6-year-old to the 16, to the 60, to the 90, I encourage all of us to ask questions, to be curious first, so that we understand how all of our stories fit together. Storytelling is actually a very important part of the African tradition. In West Africa, it was the griot, G-R-I-O-T, the griot, who collected stories from the community and told them, passed those stories down from generation to generation. And so the oral history is rich. Well, Janelle, you just said, write stories down, have people tell stories right now. Well, when we write, I was a high school English teacher, taught writing actually for a bit, and it takes some time to actually go from the word that's here to the word that's written, because we hear and think and understand things in a little different way than sometimes we can write it down. So the oral tradition allows intonation. It allows the lilt of the voice to be heard. We heard that through these storytellers this afternoon. Yes, they had written their comments down, but it was the delivery that allowed us, that encouraged us to engage with them. And so the oral tradition is step one. The written tradition comes after, or perhaps alongside. And so have people tell the story and try to capture it in the words. Translation, right? In different countries. A word that we might use here in the US is translated differently in French or in Spanish, and it's not quite the same. So we want to get the exact right word. Mark Twain said the difference between the right word and the almost right word is the difference between lightning and lightning bug. We want to get the exact right word. So in tonight's commentary, I heard several themes. One is the importance of family in teaching us lessons. Every one of our panelists talked about the influence of their families, their biological families, but also the extended family. We learn from the people that we are around, and so the importance of those lessons we carry through. Perhaps that's a question you could ask. The second is the village, the close-knit nature of community. Every one of our panelists, I believe, talked about connecting with people in the community, going to one's home, being caught in one's a community member's or neighbor's home, and family being surprised, or maybe not so surprised, to find 6 or 7 kids sitting around eating sandwiches or whatever it happens to be. That invitation to come in is rich. And so the importance of community. And third, the transition from innocence to enlightenment. There were points in time when each of our panelists recognized or remembers something changing, some level of understanding going from the childhood, the innocence of childhood, to the perhaps weight of what an innocent act to you as a child means in the adult world. And so that transition from innocence to enlightenment. We all have stories to tell, and as Sue Watson and I were just saying when we first started, you can't make it up. There are some things that you can't make up. And so the importance of sharing those stories remains important. I listen to NPR, and of course you may know StoryCorps. You may also know One Small Step, both of which are opportunities and invitations for people to tell their stories, either to the microphone or with a family member or friend. And in another instance, an opportunity to exchange ideas with people who are not like you. And that's what I think is the essence of Untold Stories, and perhaps what we need as a community more than anything else, is taking the opportunity to let our guards down, to sit with someone that we do not know, to genuinely ask questions and openly accept their answers. But only we can do that as an individual. It starts with us, one person at a time. And that's what makes Hanover and Ashland so very special in my view, because programs like this encourage and allow us to do so. It would be wonderful if this weren't the only time that we do something like this, that we come into community together and have conversation. And it's my hope that we will continue to do so. One of our speakers, I'm trying to find my note, Mr. Hargrove. I'm going to pick on you just a little bit. He mentioned that at one point in his remembrance, the scenario was that the backdrop was the song If I Had a Hammer. If I had a hammer, I'd hammer in the morning, I'd hammer in the evening, all over this land. I'd hammer out danger, I'd hammer out justice, I'd hammer out love between my brother and my sister, all over this land. Where's your hammer? Have a good evening.
Thank you, Janelle. We can tell that you spent your work life as an educator. We all learn when you speak. We thank you for speaking to us. Before we end the program, please remember to leave a donation. There's a donation basket out here. This program is free, but there are some expenses that come with putting it on. So if you can share something with us, we greatly appreciate it. But don't let that stop you from coming back in the future. Because just having you here, giving us the motivation to do this, one of our panelists talked about there's going to be a whole lot of people here and I'm nervous. And he was kind of joking. But I said they're here to show their love, they're here to show their encouragement. And so again, we thank you for being here. Now, if you would please help me to welcome our community gospel choir, which is directed by Mr. Bubba Johnson. And we're going to ask our panelists to move back so our choir can then come up and take their place. And we will be, as I think we said, that Bubba's going to lead us into some rocking and some moving. And we're going to have a good time.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Look what I got here. Y'all gonna hear something now. We do not allow any shouting, no dancing, hand clap. On beat. little light of mine.
I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine. I'm gonna let it shine.
Yeah, this little light of mine. I'm gonna let it shine.
I'm gonna let it shine.
Oh, let it shine.
Let it shine.
Oh, this little light of mine. I'm gonna let it shine.
I'm gonna let it shine.
Yeah,
This little light of mine.
I'm gonna let it shine.
I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine. I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Let it
Let it shine in my neighborhood. That's it. I like it. Don't embarrass me. Come on. Shine, let it shine. Shine, let it shine. Shine, let it shine. Shine, let it shine. Come on. Shine, let it shine. Shine, let it shine. Shine, let it shine. Shine.